Let's talk about biology. What if I told you that for centuries we've basically had it all wrong? That the body isn't some passive machine just running a program, but it's actually a bustling society of intelligent little agents, all collaborating? Yeah. Today we're going to dive into a radical new way of seeing life itself. So here's the fundamental shift. On the left, you've got the classic view. Life is a machine, kind of like a clock. The DNA is the rigid program, and the cells are just hardware that execute the code, no questions asked. But on the right, that's the revolutionary idea. Life as a collective intelligence. We're moving away from thinking about cogs in a machine and towards seeing every part as a collaborator.
But hey, to really get why the new idea is so powerful, we have to spend a minute with the old one. You know, the model that's been the bedrock of biology for decades.
Right, so the old way of thinking sees your DNA as this ultimate puppet master. It's pulling all the strings. Every single cell, every tissue, every organ, they're just puppets, mindlessly following a script. The parts themselves, they have no say, no problem-solving skills. They're just passive cogs in this huge, centrally controlled biological machine.
And this quote from the source material really just hits the nail on the head. We've been trapped in this computer or clock metaphor, assuming that all the smarts are at the top in the DNA. But this raises a really fascinating question. What if the intelligence isn't just at the top? What if it's everywhere? So, let's meet the stars of this new story, the intelligent agents. This is where we completely toss out that old idea of passive hardware. Instead, let's get to know the tiny little experts that actually make up our bodies.
And the key idea here, the word you need to remember is competency. Now, this isn't about consciousness or thinking in the human sense. Nope. It's about the built-in ability of a biological system, whether it's a tiny gene network or a whole piece of tissue, to solve problems and get to a target state, even when things get weird or the environment changes. In a nutshell, they can adapt on the fly.
Now, what is so incredibly cool is how this competency is layered. It's a hierarchy of problem solving. Way down at the bottom, you have gene networks solving incredibly complex chemical problems. A level up, individual cells are total experts at physiology, managing their own metabolism and pH balance. Then groups of cells or tissues work together to solve anatomical problems, like how do we build a hand? And finally, at the very top, the whole organism solves behavioral problems, like where do I find food? Each layer is a specialist in its own right.
Which, of course, brings us to the million-dollar question. If every single part is its own semi-autonomous expert, how on earth do they all work together to build, well, you? What's the cognitive glue that holds this whole amazing thing together? And I mean, that's a huge question, right? Just imagine trying to get trillions of experts to agree on anything. It would be total chaos, not a functioning body. And the idea of some central controller micromanaging every single cell, that's just computationally impossible. So how does life do it?
The answer is so elegant. The higher levels don't bark out orders. They're not micromanagers. Instead, they act more like guides. They create these subtle incentive structures, maybe a chemical gradient here or an electrical field there, that gently bend the option space. They basically make it so that when a cell does what's the easiest for it right where it is, it just so happens to also be what's best for the whole organism. It's decentralized genius.
And one of the main ways the body does this is through something called bioelectricity. Now, we are not talking about your brain or your nerves here. This is something different. These are slow-moving electrical patterns that flow between all our cells, acting like a kind of high-level software for the body. This network basically holds the memory, the blueprint of the final shape, guiding all those competent little cells toward the right goal.
Okay, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds like a fascinating theory, but is there any actual proof? Oh, you better believe it. Let's look at one of the most jaw-dropping experiments in modern biology, the Picasso tadpole test. So check this out. Researchers took a developing tadpole embryo when it was just starting to form, and they literally rearranged its face. They moved the eye over here, the jaw over there. They created a jumbled Picasso-like mess. They basically broke the instruction manual while the thing was still being built.
So, according to that old clockwork machine model, the outcome here should be obvious, right? The cells are just dumb hardware following a script. If you mess up their starting positions, you should end up with a permanently messed up Picasso-faced frog. End of story.
But that is not what happened. Not even close. Incredibly, the scrambled cells communicated with each other. They recognized that something was wrong, and they migrated through totally new paths to find their correct spots. And against all odds, they self-assembled into a perfectly normal tadpole face.
And this result is just the perfect demonstration of the whole idea. The cells aren't just blindly following a map. It's like they have the final destination memorized. They're acting as a collective intelligence that knows what the goal is, and they work together to get there, no matter what obstacles you throw in their way.
So, this is way more than just a cool experiment with a tadpole. This shift in thinking has massive implications for pretty much every field of science and medicine you can think of. This is the big so what moment. For instance, take evolution. The old view sees evolution as this painfully slow process, waiting around for some perfect, lucky mutation to put every part in the right place. But in this new view, evolution gets a serious speed boost. It doesn't have to reinvent the wheel every time. It just needs to find a new signal that nudges the already competent parts toward a new goal. It's like upgrading the software instead of having to build entirely new hardware from scratch. And the future frontiers this opens up are, well, they're mind-boggling. Think about regenerative medicine, where we don't try to micromanage molecules, but instead we just talk to the tissues and ask them to regrow a limb. Or designing xenobots, tiny living robots, by harnessing the innate problem-solving skills of cells. We could even build better, more robust AI and completely rethink what intelligence even means, recognizing that it exists in all sorts of systems way beyond the brain. And that leaves us with one final fascinating thought to chew on. If every single part of us, right down to our cells, is a competent agent solving its own problems, well, that completely changes how we see ourselves. Are we really the intelligent programmers running the show, or are we just one more layer in a much deeper, much more ancient biological program?